Hello, I'm Michael Beam.
And I'm Chris Pierce.
And this is the Linux Show. But it will not be the Linux Show for long. I've actually got a big announcement to make this episode. We are going to be changing the name of the Linux Show. And our reason for doing this is that, first of all, we're not really a show just about Linux. We're about all sorts of open source and free software stuff. We have no problem reporting on BSD. We have no problem reporting on the Free Software Foundation. Linux is really just the kernel, and the operating system itself and all other free software. That's what our show's really about. So, we're asking the users to help us pick a new name for the show. You guys can email me your ideas for names of the show at michael.linuxshow@gmail.com. Email me your ideas for names of the show. Be sure it's nothing profane or irrelevant. Something having to do with open source, free software, whatever. And I'll pick the 5 or 6 best ones, and then the users will have a vote, and the winner will be the new name of the show. Our second big announcement today is that due to popular demand by a lot of our users, we will be accepting user questions. You can email those questions to me again at michael.linuxshow@gmail.com. We're looking for kind of standard questions about the free software and open source community. I mean, if your questions are too technical, we're going to have to skip over them for now.
All right, well, that sounds good. Our first story tonight, Linspire reached 6.0. It's its first major release in over 2 years. It's a very controversial release because it uses non-free codecs such as WMV, .mov, the different Windows and Apple codecs. That gives a bunch of controversy to the distribution, but it's still a pretty solid contender.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty good. Big news for Linspire and anyone who uses that. A couple of updates this week. Some important packages. The GCC, that's the GNU compiler collection, came out with version 4.2.2. It's not a huge update, probably a couple of bug fixes, a few add-ons here and there, nothing major. And also this week, the Linux kernel came out with 2.6.23. So the first stable release of the 23 kernel under 6. So those are a couple of big releases, something you might watch out for to update in the near future.
All right, our next story is something that concerns me personally. Mandriva reached 2008.0. That's great stuff. It's the Linux distribution that I personally use. It has all sorts of great features, including GNOME 2.20. NVIDIA and ATI drivers come standard, so it'll automatically detect it and then install the proper drivers. Those are the proprietary ones, so if you're very concerned about free software, then you might want to tell it not to do that. But as far as I go, it's just a great thing to have those drivers. I use them very frequently. Yeah. Other stuff that Mandriva comes default with, Compiz Fusion, man, that's great. I had a heck of a time getting that installed on my Ubuntu.
It looks pretty though.
Oh man, it's just
cube,
great.
The thing. You want to see some Compiz Fusion in action. There's a lot of videos on YouTube you can check out. Just search Ubuntu and you'll have it up to your ears.
We'll have a million of them. I also like the little fire one where you can draw on the screen. That's pretty great.
They're good.
Anyway, other than that, it has a couple of other things, including reworked hardware detection, which is great. That goes along with proprietary drivers and such. And overall, it's just a fantastic system. Oh, also another important one. It comes default with the NTFS support. Now that's important because I dual boot, and occasionally I'll need to access my my music and my movies collection. They're all legitimate, of course, and I'll get those off my Windows drive. And the NTFS support really helps with that.
Yeah, Mandriva kind of originally developed for the enterprise. It's based on Red Hat, and it's designed to work with Windows. I mean, they're supposed to go together. They're supposed to work together over a network or whatever you use. It's very big news for anyone in the enterprise business, and if you use that system personally, big news for you too.
Indeed.
And
it's a great system. It becomes default with all the stuff. I had a little trouble getting working in Ubuntu, and I love it.
Mandriva's pretty good, and it's based on Red Hat, but most of our viewers and me personally, at least one of the partitions I have, run Ubuntu. And that's going to be really big news because this week, in 6 days, Ubuntu 7.10 comes out. That's Gusty Gibbon. It's the newest version of Ubuntu. It's going to have loads of updates, lots of hardware stuff. It's going to have all the newest GNOME 220, of course. It'll have Compiz Fusion enabled by default. It'll have all sorts of updates. I mean, it's a big deal. 7.4 came out a couple months ago, and they've been going on about it since. Ubuntu is the most popular Linux distribution.
That's for sure, and I definitely see why. It's very clean, it's very simple, it gets the job done, it's very straightforward. I can see how some power users wouldn't like it because it does kind of restrict some of the higher level functions. Last I checked, they intentionally made it difficult to compile your own kernel and such things. Well, I read it on their site.
I know, and it's a valid argument. But recently, Ubuntu's been better about it. It is Debian based, and
that's true.
And I mean, anything you can do as a power user in Debian, you should be able to do in Ubuntu. They've been getting better about it. When I first used Ubuntu, it was 6.10, and
those days.
It just wasn't as powerful. But
to be sure,
Ubuntu's popular. It works very well. And yeah, it does do everything automatically, but if you really want, you can go through there and you can have just as much frustration with that as you can with any other
old
system.
Gen 2 system.
Anyway.
Well, let's see, 7.10, that's supposed to come default with GNOME 2.20, just like Mandriva did.
Yeah.
That's great. It has that nice little feature down in the taskbar with the different little buttons with context, like you have a system button, you have administration button, all that stuff. That's great. And they're different colors.
I think GNOME's always done that.
There's been an add-on. I forgot the name of it, but there's been an add-on that will do it, but it now comes default with GNOME 220, so that's great.
You use KDE. I use GNOME. You use KDE, so...
I'm like Linus Torvalds. What can I say? I like my KDE.
Well, we've got a spectrum of experience anyway over that subject. So, that was the Linux show this week. Like I said at the beginning of the show, it won't be the Linux show for long, so send in those names that you have as ideas, and send in your questions about the community, and I'll be happy to, well, at least try to answer some of them on this show next week.